It's been a month since my last update, so I have a lot of ground to cover. It's day 118 for this sole surviving Charentais melon vine. As you can see, there's a little bit of a white fuzz there, and one on this leaf as well. These are some of the older leaves, and there's really only one enemy possibly left for my melon vines indoors in this very sterile environment, and that's fungi. So this is a kind of white mold, and this is the next day. I treated with some 3% hydrogen peroxide on Q-tips, and everything seems to be fine. I mean, what you see here is what was already eaten away by the mold, and these affected leaves are kind of in a place where they're not receiving all that much light. So I'm going to see what I can do to rectify the situation. So I used to think, based on what I did last year with my honeydew melon vines, that I was burning the leaves by applying hydrogen peroxide. Well, now I'm just dipping on 3% hydrogen peroxide and letting it dry out, and it's not causing any burns. So let me show you an example of what I did. So I get a sterile Q-tip and I dip it in 3% hydrogen peroxide. Just kind of wipe it around on those reproductive structures for the mold, and hopefully that keeps things at bay. So yeah, basically you can leave some droplets on there and it's fine. Alright, I don't see any more mold on any of these otherwise healthy leaves today. The 3% hydrogen peroxide doesn't seem to harm the leaves at all. But we have a lot of dead leaves over here, and one of these has 2 spots of mold on it, so I'm just going to trim all these leaves away. They don't really serve any function and haven't for a very long time. In case you totally forgot about this, this is my unsterilized sphagnum peat moss rope bucket pot outside. I have one surviving vine from the original 10 planted outdoors for this series. I had the reflector sheets with aluminum foil and all that, and it seems like this is far less robust than honeydew or cantaloupe or whatever. So this is just, it can't make it. It's been too hot this year and the leaves all got fried. Alright, so here's my setup again. As you can see, some stuff has started to come around the table. These are actually offshoots. These vines that you see here have looped all the way around the back. I'll get closer to that later, but last time we covered a very important issue. So this thing has no natural enemies anymore, just has mold as a possible problem. You can see here these leaves have spots of mold. I can get up closer, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. So that's pretty disgusting. Zoom back out again. But yeah, these leaves all grew under the poor nutrition part of the series prior to fertilization, and while they may be green and not too rough, they suffered from stunted growth and do have problems. So I'll just keep cutting away any leaves that have that white powdery mildew or whatever it is. You can see another instance of a kind of rot there. That one's kind of white and grayish. So there's just a lot of mold indoors as usual, but there are a ton of offshoots. Now that traces back to here, and this thing is just regenerating like crazy. I've trimmed away a lot of these leaves due to just them being unproductive or damaged, underdeveloped, and here's another offshoot coming out. So the new stuff is coming in looking better, but I need a lot more light intensity, and I'm going to change my setup and address that. Meanwhile, there's a decent amount of flowering activity. No female flowers yet, but the flowers have gotten big towards this end where some of these offshoots have come around and made a whole lap around. So yeah, that's basically what the deal is. This kind of stuff has just way too high of a flowering ratio to leaf ratio. So I'm going to address the situation with the leaves.
But in the meantime, just wanted to point out that we do have some champion leaves here. This has been a real pleasure to look at. It's about 14 centimeters long, but if I were to flatten that out, maybe it'd be 16 centimeters, I imagine, or even more. And it's very dark green. It's it's mature, it's hard, but it's not leathery and gross feeling like the leaves I was complaining about before. And when you get to here, these leaves further away from the light are obviously not as good as some of these inner ones. And it's no coincidence that because this clamp lamp is a few centimeters lower than the others, it gives off much more light. If you get half as close, the amount of light intensity is quadruple. So we'll go over here, and I just put in this lamp very recently. So I think light is the limiting factor right now, seeing as how the leaves under here have done the best, and those are the ones that grew under this lamp that's closest to the leaves. So I'm gonna put in some converter sockets that will make every light have 2 bulbs instead of 1, and they'll be sticking out and closer. So regarding the leaves, I just wanted to mention that I had to trim a lot of these moldy leaves or diseased leaves, burned leaves last year, and that was a lot of work outside on my balcony. This year it's just way too hot. The one on the outside is basically not making it. I'm going to give up on that and stop watering. But basically Cucumis mellow vines require a lot of work. So you got to constantly be trimming leaves, looking out for problems and stuff like that. And I feel like this Charentais melon is just not as robust as honeydew melon. So yeah, that's another problem. I mean, it's just not as robust. So the leaves are more sickly, I feel, and overall the growth is just much slower. So I'm going to change the lighting situation and show you my new setup. Okay, so here's my new setup. In many places, 5, I have these adapter converters. One socket becomes 2. It's the same kind of light bulb that I had before. And this will just remain 1 for the time being while I try to get more. So this should help out with the situation a lot. I'm guessing for a lot of these sections, the leaf growth will be pretty explosive compared to what it was before. And we should easily be getting more patches like this with some of the most robust leaves I've ever seen. And if we can get that all around the table, then things should be fine. I think the mold on some of these leaves over here, that was probably just due to those leaves being basically not having enough sunlight, being underfed, malnourished when they were developing, and they were just becoming dead tissue essentially and waiting to rot away. But unless I get a mold epidemic that takes over and destroys everything, I think I should be pretty successful going forward, and I'll keep you updated on what the growth situation looks like. I just trimmed away some of these diseased leaves here. So going forward, I imagine things will be looking a lot better than what they look like now or in the past. This is actually much better than even compared to last episode.
Alright, it's day 145, and as you can see, there's a lot more growth. I have 6 clamp lamps. I took the 7th one away for my other plants, and each one has 2 LED bulbs at 7.5 watts each. So that's what is that? 90 watts total. So that's a lot more than I originally envisioned. I hoped I could get by on 45 watts, but as you can see, it was necessary, and the other places are starting to get leaves that I believe within another week or 2 will be as big as the monster leaves that I had under that most favorable, closest clamp lamp that generated the first few monster leaves. And I have to keep rerouting all these offshoots. There might be like 15 to 20 of them by now. So over the next few days, that this whole region will fill out. A lot of new offshoots are being generated as we speak and growing very quickly. They're still all just male flowers. There's just not enough photosynthesis and production in general to generate female flowers yet. I'm losing slightly more than a leaf per day on average due to mold that I'm pruning away, but that's okay because the rate of new leaf generation far outpaces that.